coronavirus and K-12 classrooms. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we're going to spend the entire program talking a lot about K-12 schools, how they're being impacted by unprecedented actions being put in place to protect children from the coronavirus. If only we had a plan to protect kids from the depredation of public schools. So this is what I guess we should thank the coronavirus for this. They're not going backwards educationally now. Right? Tomorrow we'll be tackling the college fallout, but right now we start with thousands of schools shutting down across the country, most schools shutting down across the country, resulting in millions of children staying home.
If there's anything that comes good from the coronavirus, I guess it's that they're going to be out of those public schools for now. It looks like, and the list keeps updating, but there have been more than 20 states now who have decided that they are going to be shutting down all schools across the entire state from anywhere from 1 week to 4 weeks. A lot of these schools have spring break coming up, or it's right now, so it kind of is getting folded into that as well. But what's interesting is that California, which has the most students overall, they have decided not to, as an entire state, close down. And we'll talk about that later on and why they're doing that. Most of the big cities have also said that they are closing down. But what this really started was with Ohio Governor Mike DeWine. He was really the one who was like, we're going to shut our schools, and then every state kind of followed after. He said, it would not surprise me at all if schools didn't open again this year. That's my point. You're not going to see a serious school year through May. By the time this gets implemented, by the time this gets into a routine, even if, let's say, by the end of April, you reach the point for the public schools where it's theoretically possible for some of those kids to go back, the logistics are going to be a nightmare. And then you're going to have them back for about another month. You have to let them go again. And then you're going to have to try to balance out what they did the first part of the semester, the first quarters, right, to the second quarters. It just becomes very difficult. I think you're pretty much done with school. It's true for the colleges as well. Everybody's going to hold their breath, take their lumps, get to summer, and then reassess at summertime. Well, now that you pretty much jumped to the end there and said what's going to happen, what happened initially after these announcements were made, there's been a lot of reaction all over the place. I found an op-ed that was done in the Detroit Free Press, and the headline is, "Help, I'm stuck at home with my kids during Michigan coronavirus outbreak," and it's by Nancy Kaffer. She was in addition to Ohio, then Michigan was one of the next states to initially say, okay, we're going to have our kids at home. And so she writes, "Here I am, staring down 3 weeks of state-mandated school closure and possibly online learning. Just me and a child whose delight in this news is inversely proportional to my dismay. 3 weeks. That is, if we were lucky. I am a wretched, pessimistic cynic, a life choice that almost never leads to disappointment. So when this prospect loomed, I assumed the worst and ran immediately for the folks who are expert into long non-vacation homestays, possibly with online schoolwork to complete. Homeschoolers. Friends, they have cracked this code, and they are willing to tell us how to make this work." You know what's really tragic about this is this entire episode, we're going to see this entire process, exposes us to just how the people who put public school systems in place 150 years ago knew that we're going to get your kids so utterly dependent on government that they'll have nothing they can do. I mean, this panic here. Look at the panic. This is not that complicated to have the only real problem I see is how parents are balancing work with this, right? Correct. And we've talked before in the Dr. Duke Show how it's not an accident that you have a two-parent economy. It is not an accident that in this economy, mom and dad both need to be out of the house working. That's a plan. That's a feature for the progressives. And so now you have the question of educating your own kids, which really isn't that hard. I mean, even up and through the sophomore year of high school, any high school graduate should be able to sit down with their kids and design assignments or expose them, even if it's nothing more than watching a historical movie instead of a stupid cartoon, right? Show them a moving or a historically relevant movie and then discuss it with them. They'll get more out of that than they're getting in their public school classrooms in most cases. And my entire weekend was spent with that same mentality and all of the articles and in a lot of Facebook posts of parents who are so concerned, what am I going to do with my kids? Oh my gosh, they still need to get an education, right? Oh, and I'm like, you have a kid who's in 5th grade. How can you not come up with creative activities? But, then you keep reminding like, oh, they're not accustomed to even dare I say it, like being with their kids for more than a weekend when it's not educational purpose.
If what you want, mom and dad, and you shouldn't, but if what you want is something in your home as close as possible to what goes on in the public schools, here's how it's going to go. Get your kid out of bed about 7 o'clock, right?
Oh, wow, that's early.
Get him there, get him to school, right?
Oh, okay.
And then have homeroom, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where the bell rings, you have homeroom, and then for 10 minutes, read them announcements about stupid things going on campus, right? And then do a take attendance, send them off to their first class, make sure you give them at least one study hall in the morning and one in the afternoon, make sure that you have mandated physical education, and then in your classrooms, this is the nice thing, mom and dad, you don't really have to teach them knowledge. Just teach them sociological issues. Spend the morning talking to your 3-year-old, your 5-year-old, your 9-year-old about heterosexuality, because if they were sitting in a public school classroom, they'd be learning about transgenderism. So take your preschool kid, take your elementary school, your middle school kid, and tell them why men and women go together. I mean, it may seem like an obvious conversation. Tell them why biologically, anatomically, culturally, spiritually, women and men go together, because they're not going to hear that. This is an opportunity for you to deprogram your kids and reprogram them over the course of a semester in common sense. See, the danger of this is you'll find out how easy it is. You probably won't send them back to those public schools.
Oh, if only they would actually heed your advice. Well, and this is seen in headlines across the world now. The Guardian actually had a headline, "The Family Lockdown Guide, How to Emotionally Prepare for Coronavirus Quarantine." And really, that headline says it all. But on their same page, they had different subheads that said, be truthful, being on the same page, set up structure, keep moving, get things done, give each other space. They were trying to make it step by step for parents on how to be parents to their children, because we live in a society where we're so used to just shoving the kids off to the public school and we don't have to set up any structure for them or have them learn.
I don't want this crisis to become an opportunity for parents to be parents. If they don't know already, they're not going to go. Here's a chance for you, parents, to be educators, for God's sake. You know how to put them to bed and not let them eat donuts. You know how to make sure they clean up their room. You forget the parenting. It's time for you, mom and dad, to recognize and to experiment with really how easy it is to be a friggin' educator. It's not that complicated. Sit them down, read to them, go stop by the public library, or
if it's still open.
Or call Amazon. Have a mail. You got three kids in middle school, 2 kids in middle school, 1 in high school. Buy a couple of short paperbacks, classic literature, or read them online. Get something online, some literature online that's more than 100 years old, and read it to them. Spend some time with them. We have so handicapped you. We've made it seem like educating kids, you need a PhD in education, you need student training, you need a union at your back, you need all these textbook specialists coming by and giving you pointers. Sit down and talk to your kids about history, or talk to them about a book you've read, or show them a little bit of math. Sit down with your checkbook and show them how to balance a damn checkbook. It's time for you to recognize that being parents is first and foremost about educating your kids. You're giving them a moral education. You're teaching them etiquette. You're teaching them discipline. You're teaching them to brush their teeth, to go to bed at a healthy time. You're teaching them not to punch their sisters in the face. You're doing all those useful things. So go ahead and extend that to, books and movies and history. This is a great opportunity for you to share your worldview, to share your family ethos, to share your family's religious values with your kids in a setting that will demonstrate how utterly superfluous so much is that goes on in the public schools. It is not necessary.
And while you're the optimist, this time I'm going to be the pessimist, because the truth is these parents don't know how to do any of those things. You said balance a checkbook. I want to know how many people still have a checkbook, because of my generation, they never had a checkbook. They never learned how to do it. So we're living in an era right now where it's the grandparents who would be great to do that, but the grandparents are the ones who are supposed to be quarantined.
Yeah, but if you don't have an actual checkbook, you still have to know how much money you have in the bank. You can still take them to your bank statement and show them how to balance that. I would like to
hope that is true, but I'm speaking on behalf of the millennial generation and how we weren't taught a lot of those things. I know how to do these things, but I'm just saying,
how'd you figure it out?
I actually came from an old school system.
So this is a
lot of
chance.
These parents have not.
Look, these parents, however millennial they are, can still sit down with kids and show them things and talk to. I mean, you got the entire internet at your disposal.
I hope they
You have
do.
you have more information at your disposal with one click of a button than the entire public school system has in every library in the country. Just sit down and say, hey, okay, and just if you're a stressed out millennial, which is apparently what Katie's telling us right now, if you're a millennial, we have to talk like this to reach. Okay, fair enough. Then here's what you do. Limit it to math and reading. You can skip everything else. Limit it to math and reading. Make sure they're moving forward a little bit mathematically and they're moving forward in terms of their reading. And that's where you can tie history into reading. You can have them read books that are literary or fictional accounts of history that are exciting, they have some action in them, and use that as a way to teach writing and history and work through some mathematical issues. It is not that bleeding complicated.
Well, we already knew a couple weeks ago when we had an article saying that the coronavirus, when it was on its way, it may lead to a mass experiment with homeschool overall. So we have an article, and again, this was back in late February. They already were predicting that, you know what, mass homeschooling, it may be here. And based on what's happening across the country right now, I agree. It could be here in a sense.
No, it's not going to happen.
Now I'm the optimist, and now
I'm going to be the pessimist.
Get back to
Are you kidding? Are you telling me that the second these schools are open, giving away so-called free lunches and free breakfasts, and keeping the kids after school for theater practice, right, or for soccer, all 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day? You really think when that's back and the public schools are now dangling that big bloated federal teat in front of these parents that they're not going to send their kids running back? I'll promise you this. I guarantee you that, 95% of American public school families, if you said, okay, we skip the entire second semester of school, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is require now, but now it's June and the virus has passed. We're going to open our public schools all summer long, and we're going to require your kids. 95% of American public school parents will be right on, Sundom.
Wow.
You think that's wrong?
We'll see. We'll see.
Do you really think when that teat is dangled?
Well, we already know that teat is dangled because a lot of these states have laid out what their plans are, and their plans are right now to go for online education, but the schools are still giving out the goods, and it comes from free internet, which we found, at least in Wisconsin. I had gotten an email. Wisconsin Cable Internet Company announced they're going to give free internet, broadband, and Wi-Fi for the next 2 months to any household with a K-12 and or college kid living there if they don't already have a subscription. So they're giving them free access to do online schooling. Most of the states, the ones who have announced that they're shutting stuff down, they're going to still give out their free meals to all of, and by free meals, I mean free to the children, but not to the taxpayers. Maryland, for example, is giving 3 free meals a day at 52 of their sites, and all students are eligible, not just those who already are free and reduced. And what got me is that adults are not allowed to pick up the food for them. So how are the children who are, everyone's supposed to be quarantined, how the kids are going to walk to these various sites? How are they going to get there? And so that they are going to get breakfast, lunch, and dinner, three square meals a day.
So in the crisis, they're getting even more free stuff.
Yes.
The same public schools. And you're telling me that those public schools, once they're open again, moms and dads are going to be like, whew, we've learned our lesson. This is what the real lesson here is. See what a danger it is to be so unprepared and so dependent on government. And public schools are government schools. Public schools are the worst aspects of government. Take the worst aspects of government and transform them into an educational system, and you get today's educational system. You think the lesson would be, right? This is turning my children, my family, this is reducing my kids into nothing more than subalterns for the state, right? Who somebody else has to pay, somebody else has to provide a way, somebody else owes them. You think this would be the message that America would receive from this, but it won't be. What's going to happen is they won't be able to open the schools fast enough. And then, once you've extended these extra perks, like 3 meals a day, do you think when the school year comes back again in the fall, they're going to stop that? Well, we've seen, Dr. Pester, we've seen in the coronavirus, right, just this last semester, kids starving, kids who don't even have dinner options. And so how can we, now that school's back in, how can we now stop extending to these children? And shouldn't we make mandatory free high-speed cable for every family who has a child anyway? And the Spectrum's not going to pay for that. They'll pay for it during the coronavirus. We should make that part of our every student gets it, right? So let's raise property taxes. Let's take another referendum on how much you should pay so that we can provide the cable companies, if you've got kids in school, free fast wireless all the time. These benefits will not go away.
And one of the worst offenders of this type of action is California, which is interesting because Governor Gavin Newsom actually has not yet done a statewide closure of the schools. And he said that Tuesday they're going to announce their plans moving forward. Just listen to what he had to say.
We are vetting and curating and validating all kinds of private and public sector solutions to address the following and obvious real problems. How you feed people that cannot be fed otherwise because they're on free or reduced, not just lunch, but also free or reduced breakfast. Some districts, 80%, some districts even higher, of their children meet that criteria, 60% throughout our entire educational system. It's one thing to say you have a plan. It's another to actually deliver on that plan.
This is what you get with the welfare state. It is inconceivable to believe with this kind of prosperity in America that there are 80% or more of kids in some of these districts who rely entirely on the public schools to be fed. You have conditioned these families to believe that what is basically free help, is mandatory. It's not. You're telling me these parents would not be able to feed their kids if it stopped? No, they would be able to feed their kids if they had to. They could. If they could feed themselves, they can feed their kids. If they can feed their dog, they can feed their kids. But this is what happens in the nanny state that you get in places like California.
Well, what's interesting is that almost right after he said this, he said that California is a nation state, and he deals in reality, not the perception.
Yes,
he deals in reality.
That we have the state of California has to feed kids breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or there's going to be a mass die-off. That's not reality.
And while we're talking about schools specifically, he did in that same thing. They are opening hotels, motels, and all that for all of the homeless to go have homes now, and we're going to see what happens to California over the next couple weeks.
Why? Because now you're opening hotels now, right? You're commandeering public space to home. How does that stop now? Oh, the disease is gone now. Now back on the streets you go? No. This is, you heard what Rahm Emanuel said, right? Never let a crisis go to waste. This is California now. You already saw it in New York where de Blasio is saying that the state needs to exercise its authority and procure for itself the rights to production of certain things. Take over private companies that produce things that are really essential so that the people have them. This is, once this pandemic is over, you will not recognize America. You will, the kind of things we're doing now aren't, why would you stop them just because the virus goes away? The same arguments, they're still homeless without the virus, right? There are apparently still hundreds of millions of kids in America whose parents don't know how to feed them. Don't have and this is what you were saying before. My generation, the millennials, blah, 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 right? I don't
think I said
you
it
didn't
like
say
that.
but I'm mocking the millennials now, right? Oh my God. If school doesn't feed our kids breakfast, egg, what is an egg? I don't know what an egg is.
Exactly. It's sad but true.
It's nonsense.
It is all nonsense. So moving forward here, we're into what's the plan? What are they going to do? There is an article that came out of EdSurge where they talk about the case for shutting schools down and instead of them actually going online, because now a lot of the schools, the ones who are saying, okay, we're not meeting in person, we're still going to have online classes for K-12, which at Freedom Project, we are well accustomed to K-12 online education. But most of these schools have no idea how to put a kindergartner in front of a computer and have them be educated in the proper sense. So what EdSurge is saying that a growing body of evidence suggests that online learning works least well for our most vulnerable learners. If you're going online, the number one question is not what tech to use to teach online. It should be how will you support your most struggling students? So their focus is on the struggling students and saying, you know what, shut it down.
And that tells you something. It tells you that what the schools care about are the struggling kids. They don't care about giving normal kids a normal education. They don't care about high achievers. And this is what the entire model of your federal government, and you see it most clearly in education. We don't care about the vast majority of American kids. We only care about the quote unquote vulnerable ones. And guess who that is? It's the minuscule number of transgender kids, right? It's the bisexual 5-year-old, right? That's what they care about. Or the illegal immigrant children. That's the other most vulnerable, right? And so, yeah, I guess you got a problem. Well, you send these illegal immigrant kids to public schools who don't even speak English. No wonder they struggle, and no wonder they stay vulnerable, right? Maybe they shouldn't be here to begin with, or be here in a much more controlled way. But if those are the ones you care about, you're not going to be able to teach them online. And the public schools aren't teaching them anyway. What are the public schools doing? They're feeding them. They're making sure they get their immunizations. What else are they doing? They're acculturating these kids, telling these kids how victimized they are by the system.
This is also Ed Surge, almost not verbatim, but pretty close. They write as a reasoning, there's another thread to be made about the fact that for many students, school is the place young people go to get healthy meals, find safe spaces to spend the day, to get laundry done, etc.
To get laundry done.
I know. Your local and regional safety net depends tremendously on public schools.
So this has nothing to do with schooling.
Of course.
I mean, they're washing your kids' laundry now.
Yes, it is.
And the idea that this is a huge scam. The idea that most parents, even most vulnerable parents, don't know how to use a washing machine, don't know how to use a coin op, don't know how to wring things out in a sink, can't feed their kids, don't have this whole concept of breakfast eludes them, is not true. But it goes to what the progressives want. And I said this 10 years ago. I said 10 years ago, the main purpose of Common Core was dependency, right? Get greater numbers of dependency on government, on federal and state institutions, right? You want a population that can't look after itself. Not because, and moms and dads didn't understand it. Well, Dr. Presser, why would we create dumber schools? Why would we turn kids out of school who not know how to read? That's obvious, right? Because people like that can't become entrepreneurs. They can't raise enough money. According to you, your update that you just gave us about millennial, they can't even feed breakfast to their kids.
Apparently not.
And
They're
so
sheeples.
If that's the case, then what demographic is it that runs to government and says, give us cradle to grave everything, and we'll give you our guns, our liberty, our freedom, our speech? Which generation is it? It's that one. So they're the public schools are not breeding your kids for success or even survival. They're the Red Cross, right? You come to us and we'll give you a hot cup of coffee, a clean heroin needle, right? You come to us and we'll give you the bare essentials you need to live a functional life. And that's the end of it. The higher things, like literacy, will remain closed to you.
All right, one more negative, and then let's turn a little bit of positive. One more negative that is happening as a result of this, and this is going to be the ongoing discussion. High school sports have been canceled. There has been a lot of the winter sports are right at the tail end, so a lot of state championships with basketball, wrestling, all of that, and obviously now spring sports are going to be canceled. So just looking at the sporting component of it, you have to think already in the future. What about the proms and graduations and all of that? So this is all stuff that's coming kind of in our heads right now, and we have no idea 2 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now. We can't project out to May if that's going to happen.
I got to tell you a couple other things, too. Do you miss the NBA is completely shut down, no spring training? I don't miss it.
Well, you're not a big sports guy. I miss baseball.
I was a huge sports fan.
Well, you got angry at them.
Well, over and above the steroids, over and above the ridiculous salaries, $100 million pitchers, despite over and above the scandals with cheating and everything, doping and fighting and womenizing and all of that stuff, just tiresome. I grew up at least as big a sports fan as you did in one of the worst sports cities in America, Cleveland, Ohio.
Is this true?
I don't miss it. I just don't miss it.
Well, I'm putting this out to spin it positive. This could be obviously a great opportunity for families
to move beyond sports.
Yes, for families to become families again,
exactly.
And not dad or mom, whoever is just watching the sports. This is an opportunity. Why don't you? There are things you can do in your own house, or you can go in your own backyard, throw the ball around.
Yep.
It's getting warmer, and we live in one of the coldest climates areas across the nation. So if we can do it, you can do it.
In some ways, I think this virus is a bellwether of where we're going to be. I mean, and the signs are not good. It could have been an opportunity for parents to become to recognize that educating kids is what we do. We are the primary educator. It could be that. Maybe it will. I don't see it. I think this is going to remind American moms and dads how desperately they want somebody else to raise their kids. They want somebody else to teach them. They want somebody else to feed them. They want somebody else to apparently wash their clothes. They want somebody else to provide health care for them. They want somebody else to teach them how to think. They want somebody else to frame their morality and politics. They want somebody else to teach them about sex. We don't want to do it, you do it. And if that's where we are, and you seem to say that the younger generations are, from what I see, I think you're right, then what will happen is a doubling down. All of these emergency measures, all of these things that are outrageous in terms of government overreach will become normal. Now, you're not getting rid of this stuff when this is over. You're going to double down on them.
And that's going to do it for this Outbreak Monday. If you like the show, please help us keep others educated by sharing this episode with your family and friends on all of the platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Parler, so on and so forth.
Today we focused on K-12. Tomorrow we'll be taking a look at the universities. But I have one request of you. Why don't you email us? If you're a mom and dad in the public school and you got the kids home with you, I know most of our families probably are homeschool or private school, but if you're a public school mom and dad and you got kids at home, tell us what we might be able to do for you. Maybe we do a half an hour educational series for you every day. Maybe for half an hour every day, Katie and I'll pop on. We'll talk about a book. We'll talk about a poem. Tell us if that would be useful for you, that we bring a little education, not just politics of education, but actual education into your living room. You let us know what would work for you. But before we go, I want to mention Freedom Project Academy. Look, you've seen what's going on, right? The public schools can't protect your kids against bullies. They can't protect your kids against drugs. Certainly abet sex in the schools. Your public schools can't protect your kids from the coronavirus. Your public schools don't teach your kids at the grade level they're supposed to be taught. Well, why not consider an online school? That online school where we have live teachers teaching to your kids directly through the television, through the computer. All of those things your kids are spared, plus they're getting an education that is completely grade level appropriate. That's a big deal, isn't it? We're enrolling kids now. Please take a look at our fully accredited Judeo-Christian online school. Request a free information packet at freedomforschool.com. That's freedomforschool.com. Take care of a lot of these problems. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay quarantined, my friends.